Hey guys, we're going to do a quick look at Barack Obama's acceptance speech in Chicago. And I want to point out a couple things. One, the date. It's 2008. This is when Obama became president. This is after his presidential election. So it's not his inauguration. And the votes have been counted. John McCain, his opponent, has called Obama and said, hey, you're going to win, so congratulations. And so Obama has been elected, but he hasn't become president yet. I also want you to note the time, 12:02 a.m. If you've ever stayed up and watched a presidential election, you know that they tend to wind down pretty late in the night most of the time. And so this is right after McCain has called and said, congratulations. Now Obama is appearing to probably a pretty rowdy crowd that's pretty excited about his election. And he's in Chicago, which is kind of his home base. That's where he really established himself politically in Illinois and in Chicago. And so he's basically in his adopted hometown. All right. If there's anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. Well, what is our answer? Well, Barack Obama, the first African-American president in our country's history, also did not come from wealth. And he's not unique. There are a decent amount of presidents who didn't come from wealth. But first African-American, didn't come from wealth. And so what he's saying is the dream of like an equal country where people have opportunity that our founders had and freedom to pursue their dreams. If anyone questions the ability of our democracy to deliver on the American dream, Obama is saying his election is our answer. Those things are all still possible. All right. There's a lot of applause. It's the answer told by lines that stretched around schools and churches in numbers this nation has never seen, by people who waited 3 hours and 4 hours, many for the first time in their lives, because they believe that this time must be different, that their voices could be the difference. What's he talking about here? Those of you who are very observant probably have figured out he's talking about voting. Lines of 3 hours, 4 hours. I've never had to wait quite that long, but I've had to wait before. That this election might be different. I wonder why. It's the answer spoken by young and old, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, gay, straight, disabled, and not disabled. Americans who sent a message to the world that we have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are, and always will be, the United States of America. So all of us take part in this process. Voting, in Obama's description here, is so much more than just I gotta go to do this thing. It's like that is our collective voice as Americans when we come together and say this is the direction we're going. And so what Obama's doing, when you look back here, is you notice he's mentioning extremes everywhere, right? Young and old, rich and poor. That's everybody, right? We're all either young or old or somewhere in between, or rich or poor or somewhere in between, Democrat or Republican or somewhere in between. He mentions all the races, gay, straight, disabled or not disabled. He's covering everybody. And every single one of us is part of the United States of America. So he's delivering a unifying message here, or attempting to. All right. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. Okay, I want to point out something really, really good here. And I don't know if the term arc of history came from someone before him, but Martin Luther King mentions the arc of history. And he says it's long and bends towards justice. Another word for justice, you could say, would be like fairness. And I've heard other people say, yeah, the arc of history is long and bends towards justice, like Martin Luther King says, but it's because people bend it. We force fairness. We force and fight for justice. And so when Barack Obama says the arc of history, that people put their hands on it and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day, he's building on that idea that Martin Luther King talked about in the 1960s, that now we have an African-American president because people took the arc of history and said, we're going to make this happen. It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this date and this election at this defining moment, change has come to America. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we achieved to put their hands... Well, hold on now. Looks like we've got a little typo in the Washington Post. Looks like this is the exact same thing. So we're going to go ahead and move past that. As you can tell, I'm reading through this with you. All right. A little bit earlier this evening, I received an extraordinary, gracious call from Senator McCain. That's John McCain. You may still see his name. You will still see his name in the news today because he's still pretty active in the Senate. But he was the Republican candidate. So this call he's talking about is his concession call, is what they call it, whenever they call and concede the election. And so he called Obama, and that's what he's going to talk about. Senator McCain fought long and hard in this campaign, and he's fought even longer and harder for the country that he loves. He has endured sacrifices for America that most of us cannot begin to imagine. We are better off for the service rendered by this brave and selfless leader. So here you have a Democrat complimenting a Republican. What he's talking about, John McCain was a prisoner of war during Vietnam. And so when we talk about enduring sacrifices for America, most of us can't begin to imagine. Yeah, that's totally true. Obama's not just like making stuff up. McCain really has. Okay, here we go. I congratulate him. I congratulate Governor Palin, that was Sarah Palin, who is the vice presidential candidate, for all that they've achieved. And I look forward to working with them to renew this nation's promise in the months ahead. What is this nation's promise? I wonder. I want to thank my partner in this journey, a man who campaigned from his heart and spoke for the men and women he grew up with on the streets of Scranton. And I don't know if that's Scranton, Pennsylvania or not. And rode with on the train home to Delaware, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Joe Biden. And I would not be standing here tonight without the unyielding support of my best friend for the last 16 years. The rock of our family, the love of my life, the nation's next First Lady, Michelle Obama. Sasha and Malia, so as you can see, he's going through the people who have surrounded him. You got your vice president, you got your wife. Sasha and Malia are his daughters. I love you both more than you can imagine, and you have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the new White House. Ha ha ha. Everyone's like, oh, good joke. Good joke, President Obama, or President-elect Obama. And while she's no longer with us, I know my grandmother's watching, along with the family that made me who I am. I miss them tonight. I know that my debt to them is beyond measure. To my sister Maya, my sister Alma, all my other brothers and sisters, thank you so much for all the support that you've given me. I am grateful to them. Remember, this is a presidential acceptance speech. And so it's almost like anytime you see someone accept an award or an honor, you're looking at everyone who's surrounded you, and you're making sure to include them in your victory. And to my campaign manager, David Plouffe, applause, the unsung hero of this campaign, who built the best political campaign, I think, in the history of the United States of America. All right. To my chief strategist, David Axelrod, who's been a partner with me every step of the way. David Axelrod, and I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but I think he knew Barack Obama. They knew each other from the time they were like in their early 20s, early to mid 20s. And so they've known each other a long time. To the best campaign team ever assembled in the history of politics. So whenever we talk about campaign teams, these are like, it's not just a president running for office. You've got speechwriters, you've got strategists. There's a whole lot of positions that are tied up in making sure that this person is successful on both sides. And so this is a really big thing. You know, we keep talking about all these speeches in this project, but you need to keep in mind that most speeches are not just the product of that president or that leader, that they have teams of people who are speaking into those speeches and saying, use this word here. Maybe you need to talk about this here. Maybe you need to tell a personal story here. And so those people would be included in these things that he's doing. Okay. You made this happen, and I am forever grateful for what you've sacrificed to get it done. But above all, I will never forget who this victory truly belongs to. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. Who's he talking about? We may come back to that. I was never the likeliest candidate for this office. We didn't start with much money or many endorsements. Our campaign was not hatched in the halls of Washington. You know, one thing that's really interesting about politicians, they all do this. No one wants to be like a part of Washington, because that means basically the establishment. If you're looking at this on like high school terms, everyone wants to associate with the outcasts. Like, I'm an outcast. I'm not one of the in crowd. I'm not like the most popular clique. That's what Washington is. And there's all sorts of bad connotations with Washington, like wastefulness and corruption. And so everyone wants to say, you know what? I'm not from Washington. You heard it a lot in this last election. So his campaign was not hatched in the halls of Washington. It began in the backyards of Des Moines, in the living rooms of Concord, and the front porches of Charleston. Here's what you need to understand. We have an election system in this country called the primary system, where the parties have different elections to find out who their candidates are going to be. So they're just in different states. Well, the first one, you hear about all the time when you pay attention to it, is in Iowa. And there's always a whole lot of focus on the Iowa primaries, because that's where you find out, oh, okay, this is going to be the Democratic Party's candidate for president, or could be. Concord is in New Hampshire. That's where the next one is. Charleston, South Carolina. What he's saying is the people in these places were the ones that pushed Barack Obama to the forefront of the campaign or the election. It was built by working men and working women who dug into what little savings they had to give $5 and $10 and $20 to the cause. Working men and working women. It grew strength from the young people who rejected the myth of their generation's apathy. This is not caring. And you always hear this leveled on this charge against young people. They don't care about anything. They're only on their phones. And they just play video games. I don't even know if they leave their house. You know, like that's the kind of thing you hear. That's what Obama's talking about. That our generation, this is basically my generation, is accused of being apathetic. But in this election, they rejected that myth, that lie, to elect Obama. So I think we're already kind of figuring out who this election belongs to in Obama's eyes: working men and women, young people who rejected the myth of generation's apathy, who left their homes and their families for jobs that offered little pay and less sleep. It drew strength from the not-so-young people who braved the bitter cold and scorching heat to knock on doors of perfect strangers, and from the millions of Americans who volunteered and organized and proved that more than 2 centuries later, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people has not perished from the earth. One of the things that he's doing right here, let me see, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. He's quoting Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. That's what the Great Civil War is about. If you refer to that Gettysburg Address, is can a government of the people, by the people, and for the people remain? Can it survive? This is your victory. So all these people here, not so young people who campaigned, young people who rejected apathy, and working people. Okay. And I know you didn't do this just to win an election, and I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead. Enormity would be, monumental largeness. I don't even think that's a word, but we're going to put it. Largeness, almost like I could say like bigness, even though I know that's not a word. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's not a word. Of the task that lies ahead. For even as we celebrate tonight, we know the challenges that tomorrow will bring are the greatest of our lifetime. 2 wars, what are these? Iraq and Afghanistan. A planet in peril, global warming. The worst financial crisis in a century. This is the 2008 stock market crash that he's talking about. If you are really astute or knowledgeable, you might realize that some of these things are part of the Democratic platform, which is what they believe, what they want to fight for. You would probably not find a Republican president, I'm speaking in generalities, at least at this point, who would say, we got to do something about the planet in peril, about global warming. Even as we stand here tonight, we know there are brave Americans waking up in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan to risk their lives for us. There are mothers and fathers who will lie awake after the children fall asleep and wonder how they'll make the mortgage or pay their doctor's bills. This is a little bit of foreshadowing to what we'd say Obamacare. Save enough for their child's college education. There's new energy to harness, new jobs to be created, new schools to build and threats to meet, alliances to repair. The road ahead will be long. Our climb will be steep. We may not get there in 1 year or even in one term. But America, I have never been more hopeful than I am tonight that we will get there. I promise you, as a people, we will get there. All right. Then the audience starts chanting, "Yes, we can," which was his campaign slogan at the time. There will be setbacks and false starts. There are many who won't agree with every decision or policy I make as president, and we know the government can't solve every problem. But I will always be honest with you about the challenges we face. I will listen to you, especially when we disagree, and above all, I will ask you to join in the work of remaking this nation, the only way it's been done in America for 221 years, block by block, brick by brick, calloused hand by calloused hand. Calloused hands are what happens when you use your hands a lot. If you swung an axe, splitting wood, or swung a hammer, you get calluses on your hands, which this is implying work. That's how we change America, by work. What began 21 months ago in the depths of winter cannot end on this autumn night. This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change, and that cannot happen if we go back to the way things were. It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice. This sounds a lot like JFK. It's not quoting him, but it sounds like him. I'm just going to put JFK, question mark. So let us summon a new spirit of patriotism, of responsibility, where each of us resolves to pitch in and work harder and look after not only ourselves, but each other. Let us remember that if the financial crisis taught us anything, it's that we cannot have a thriving Wall Street while Main Street suffers. Main Street would be small business, everybody in the little towns around America. In this country, we rise or fall as one nation, as one people. Let's resist the temptation to fall back on the same partisanship and pettiness and immaturity that has poisoned our politics for so long. Let's remember, let me say something about partisanship is whenever you see people who just are basically slaves to their party. Democrats who won't work with Republicans, Republicans who won't work with Democrats. Let's remember that it was a man from this state who first carried the banner of the Republican Party. Who's that? I wonder if you guys know. First Republican president from Illinois, that is someone we call Abraham Lincoln. To the White House, a party founded on the values of self-reliance and individual liberty and national unity. What you have here is he's complimenting at least the history of the Republican Party, a Democratic president complimenting the Republican Party. That's pretty cool. Those are values that we all share. And while the Democratic Party has won a great victory tonight, we do so with a measure of humility and determination to heal the divides that have held back our progress. As Lincoln said to a nation far more divided than ours, we are not enemies, but friends. I love that line. I love it when Lincoln says it, and I love it when anybody else says it. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. And to those Americans whose support I have yet to earn, I may not have won your vote tonight, but I hear your voices. I need your help, and I will be your president too. And to all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. A new dawn of American leadership is at hand. What's he talking about? The globe. How's America going to act to the rest of the world? All right. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. Doesn't this sound a lot like JFK's inaugural? And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, Tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope. I love that word, unyielding hope. That means it's a hope that doesn't give up. It doesn't stop. All right, this last part, I'm just going to read. But keep in mind that anytime someone's sharing a personal story, they're appealing to your emotions. They're helping you put yourself in the feet of somebody's experience. But I'll just read it and then we'll finish it. That's the true genius of America, that America can change. So true. Our union can be perfected. What we've already achieved gives us hope for what we can and must achieve tomorrow. This election had many firsts and many stories that will be told for generations, but one that's on my mind tonight's about a woman who cast her ballot in Atlanta. She's a lot like the millions of others who stood in line to make their voice heard in this election, except for one thing. Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old. She was born just a generation past slavery. So if she would have been born in 1902, not great at math. A time when there were no cars on the road or planes in the sky. Think about that. When someone like her couldn't vote for two reasons: because she was a woman and because of the color of her skin. Remember, he just said America can change. That's what he's talking about here. And tonight, I think about all that she's seen throughout her century in America: the heartache and the hope, the struggle and the progress, the times we were told that we can't, and the people who pressed on with that American creed, yes, we can. At a time when women's voices were silenced and their hopes dismissed. Remember, we talked a lot about Susan B. Anthony, women's suffrage. Remember, the 19th Amendment wasn't passed until almost 20 years, just about 20 years, into the 20th century, into the 1900s. She lived to see them stand up and speak out and reach for the ballot. Yes, we can. When there was despair in the Dust Bowl and depression across the land, the Great Depression, she saw a nation conquer fear itself, with the New Deal, new jobs, new sense of common purpose. Yes, we can. Who's he alluding to? FDR. When the bombs fell on our harbor and tyranny threatened the world, she was there to witness a generation rise to the greatness and a democracy was saved. Yes, we can. Who's he talking about? Pearl Harbor. She was there for the buses in Montgomery, the hoses in Birmingham, and a bridge in Selma, and a preacher from Atlanta who told the people that we shall overcome. Yes, we can. Who's he referring to? MLK. A man touched down on the moon. A wall came down in Berlin. A world was connected by our own science and imagination. Space program, Berlin Wall, internet. And this year, in this election, she touched her finger to a screen and she cast her vote. Because after 160 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there is so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many, we are one, that while we breathe, we hope, and where we are met with cynicism and doubts and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you, God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.